Bismillah and welcome to another episode of The Bridge. And today I have a good brother of ours, Muhammad, also known as Hitz. Jazakumullah khair for coming, akhi. I know you've come from far.
What yak?
So straight into it, and I've watched a few of your things, so I don't want to go too much into what you've ever said before, but I want, obviously, you know where it is. We're Muslims, it's The Bridge, we're trying to bridge people, ideas, backgrounds, things like that. Just go straight into your life, beginnings, and then we'll obviously move along, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum first thing. Before we start the podcast, it's really important to mention, sometimes we tell some stories, it's not to glorify. Do you understand? It's for hopefully someone watching this, because some of these kids, they don't take advice from anyone. Mm-hmm. If they respect a certain sort of person, a certain type of, if you don't come from that lifestyle, sometimes they don't show respect. So sometimes, you have to explain to them, look, you understand where they're coming from. Mm. So it's really important to be not just a story. Mm. So you want to ask me what my background is, yeah?
Yeah, just early beginnings, inshallah. We always like to just start from the foundations.
My father came from Pakistan, from Kashmir. I think he came here in the 60s or 70s, early days. Originally they moved to Bradford, and then from there they came down south to Reading, just a little bit outside London. When they came, obviously they came to work and stuff like that. So they didn't really come here to speak English and learn English. They just came just to work.
Okay.
So that's where we grew up. We grew up in Reading.
Raised there?
Raised there, yeah.
Born there?
Born, raised, everything.
Okay.
Yeah. I was born on the street. I lived there all my whole life, on that street. Mm. So where we came from, there wasn't a lot of Muslims there. Mm. We used to have a little house, a small terrace house. And it was like a cultural masjid. So when you're growing up, you don't really want to go, but you kind of...
To the mosque?
To the mosque, because it's not really a knowledge-based...
Yeah,
you understand? It's
cultural.
You got to go there. And if you misbehave, you're catching some different type of lashes.
Mm. Even then they used to lash them days, yeah?
Yeah, he was if someone did that now, he'd probably get locked up. Mm. It was a different type of lashes. So obviously we weren't really learning nothing about religion. Mm-hmm. We were going there just repeating what we
was told.
Read. Yeah, that's it. So we didn't really understand nothing about deen, what it was, what it wasn't. So there wasn't a lot of Muslims in that area. It was a few families scattered around, 10, 15 families. Mm. And so we would always be outside. Obviously, because we didn't really have much going inside the house. Back in the day, there's no social media, there's no computers. Mm. And obviously my father was a working man feeding a lot of people here and back home. So we didn't really get them luxuries in life.
When you say how many of you is there? Brothers and sisters you're talking about?
It was 10 of us in a 3-bedroom terrace.
Allahumma barak.
Yeah, so, it was, alhamdulillah, we had a roof over our head and that, but them luxuries, like a computer and them things there, we didn't really have them things that when we were kids.
Never Nintendo Saga or none of them.
And obviously, as we got older, older, but them ages 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, it was the pound shop.
Okay.
You go there and get your toys, But that was the scenario for all my friends. Because their fathers all came from the same background. So the mother will stay at home, look after the kids, and the father will go work. And, nowadays, obviously, is the income comes from both sides, but them times it was a bit different. So we would spend a lot of time outside from young. And from the street aspect, there was a big, a West Indian influence on the street. The street guys. So you kind of knew who's doing what. So that had a massive impact on us growing up, seeing that. Seeing people drive nice cars and things like that. They got it kind of in a dodgy type of way. So that started to influence us a little bit.
And what age are we talking about now? Just so we have a timeline.
Between, say, 10 to 13, 14.
Just going back in terms of, firstly, Jazakallah khair for coming. Appreciate that. In terms of primary school, how was your primary school? How was, in terms of your education at that kind of stage?
So the primary school was just literally around the corner from the neighbourhood. And I don't remember learning nothing. It's just somewhere we all used to go. We used to get in a lot of trouble, all of us. We get in a lot of trouble. At that time, it was a very weird thing going on. It was we were the Asians, and we weren't respected on the street level. So there would be a lot of bullying on us from other communities. Do you understand? Whether they were the white or whatever they was. So we were always kind of fighting. Like school type of fights, and you get called racist abuse and stuff like that. So you're always kind of like fighting and some people getting kicked out and things like that. So it wasn't the experience of how school should be, basically.
Okay, so you moved on to secondary school.
Yeah.
11, 12. You're seeing these guys on the streets. How did the early years of secondary school go for you?
So the first secondary school I went to with my friends, I got kicked out in the first year. And then I got sent to like a majority white school. And it was like between two council estates. So the first day I walked in, so you certain words on this podcast?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So the first day I walked into the school, so the school's in one part of the area, and then you've got like one council area on this side and one council area on that side. So the first day I walked in that school, I remember someone called me a Paki. And we literally start fighting on the spot. And so that school there, I had to fight to gain some respect. So as I got through the years, they stopped being racist, basically. And I don't even think like it was kind of like they knew what they were doing, but because of the areas they came from, that was normal lingo to them. Do you understand what I mean? Like that's what I was to them. So as you start fighting and arguing backwards and forwards, there was a few other Asian people scattered around the school, but they would just take it. Do you understand? But when I went there,
why didn't you do what they done and just take it?
Because that's not how we grew up. Just how we grew up fighting, innit? So
your kind of group.
Yeah, so like all of us, and we all kind of grew up being naughty, basically. So it wasn't something new being called them words, but we just wouldn't take it. You understand? We would always say, at least in the minimum, we would say something back. But yes, a lot of the times you would just get physical.
Okay, and at that time, your early secondary school, mum and dad are Muslim. You're born in a Muslim family. What was going? You mentioned about the masjid being a bit cultural. But your journey, even at that age, different from many other brothers that we've had on the podcast, because they're coming from non-Muslim backgrounds, or sometimes no deen whatsoever. You with Muslim parents, masjid nearby. What was going through your mind about Islam at that moment, and about Allah, and the Day of Judgment and paradise and hell and so on?
Sadly, that nothing, because first of all, there was that language barrier, because we wasn't really like experts in our language. Do you understand what I mean?
You mean what, English?
No, like Punjabi and whatever.
Okay,
so even now, I struggle with it. Because a lot of the times we're outside. Do you understand? So the only people speaking the language to us is the mum and dad. So when we're with our friends, when we're at school, we will speak English.
Okay.
So the religious people in the masjid, there was how can I put it? There was like a barrier between us. They didn't really understand what we were going through, because they were like, they had come here from back home, a lot of them. So they were always looking at things from that back home aspect. And I think they thought that being like harsh was a way of discipline, if you understand what I mean. Obviously that just pushed us away from the mosque, do you understand? So
deep down, because let's say you went to, it's like, Egyptian, Somali community, they're into like hifz. A child will kind of like, even he hasn't memorized the whole Quran, but do quite a bit. And what I've noticed over the years, what happens when you've got Quran in your heart, or you can even read. So in the Asian community, be like, just read, complete it once, twice, and so on. There's a barakah element where a person deep down would know halal and haram, good and bad. Was that inside you?
Nah, none of us.
Okay.
I don't know one person who became a hifz in the area. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of Muslims there. Maybe that was one of the reasons. You understand? Actually, looking back now, I can't remember anyone even memorizing like half of the Quran or anything like that. I think that was because there wasn't a lot of Muslims at that time. Alhamdulillah, over the years, the community grew, but at that point, I'm trying to think, I can't remember anyone like memorizing anything in particular. We went there, we read, and he would listen, but we wouldn't memorize anything. We would just read from the Quran.
Okay.
And at that point, I could read Arabic from the Quran. I forgot it afterwards, but at that point, I could read.
Inshallah.
Was the house, your household, you said there was 10 of you plus your mum and dad, obviously, was the house Muslim orientated? By that I mean, obviously I know your dad works, so it's difficult sometimes when your dad works. come home, also give you like reminders, teach you about Islam. Also, your mum's got 10 of you, so
Yeah, of course.
the dynamic of that.
It was 10 of us, including my mum and dad. So it was 8 of us.
Okay, 10.
So, yeah, it's things like Ramadan, for example. The family will fast. You know, we would try to fast as little kids and stuff like that. The 5 prayers wasn't really there. You know, my mum and dad would pray sometimes, you know, Jummah and stuff like that. But that was just I think it was just the Asian thing, really, you know, at that time, because they really came here to work and to make paper. So you wouldn't really get a lot of the men going 5 times a day because they was at work. Like their work hours were like 12, 13 hours a day.
And I'm guessing whilst they was at work, they wasn't allowing them to pray or things like this.
Very much
because even for me, when I was in the construction industry, funny enough, and I used to work for companies when I first come out of prison or whatever, and I'm trying to work. I was working for this one Irish groundworks company, and it was winter time. So you know how the salahs are like back to back. So around 12 o'clock, I quickly run out, do my little salah, come back, do some work. Around like 2, I go again. And the guy, when he got to about Maghrib, around 4, he's like, Abdul, you're always going for 5 minutes. Where you keep going? I said, I'm just taking a little smoke break, just like you lot keep taking smoke breaks. But I'm just praying. But they wouldn't, like, that was for them when I told them that I'm praying rather than even taking a smoke. That was like something ajib to them. And when I told them Fridays I have to go to mosque or whatever, they was like, no, we can't take a whole 40 minutes off. So I can imagine, when was that, like 70s, 80s?
This was like, 70s, 80s.
And they weren't letting them go pray. Or, do you know what I mean?
That's just, I think that's a new thing now where
they're letting you pray and things like this.
I don't think back then.
So the deen was kind of problematic already.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was also a lack of knowledge. You know, I don't think it wasn't really knowledge based them times, you know. There wasn't that access to what we have access to today, you know, social internet and books and stuff.
Yeah.
Because even translations, were they that popular?
No, not like that. No.
Exactly. So
okay, you mentioned you're looking at the streets, you're looking at the guys driving fancy cars. You're, let's say, 12, 13, 14. What's going through your mind at that time, and what kind of direction do you want to take?
my next door neighbour, like literally the house next to us, I'm not going to say his name, but his nickname was TC. He was like one of the main figureheads from the West Indian community on the street level. And I used to always want to be like him because he used to always have a nice car and stuff. And I used to always when he used to come outside the house, it was like I used to get excited just to see what car he's driving and stuff. So I remember, I don't think he even realised, but he had like a massive impact on me as a kid because I wanted to be like him basically. Because he was that guy in the neighbourhood, you know? So I think that had a big impact on me. But there was really no one else to look up to. You know, everyone else is working in factories or whatever. So apart from like playing football and stuff like that, there was no one really there. There was no one really there around you that you could look up to and think, oh, I want to be like that. You understand what I mean? So we kind of like went down the kind of wrong road from there.
But what made you think, because I've asked that too, I can't remember one of the brothers before, what made you think that was the thing to be?
Money.
Why wasn't it in engineering? Why wasn't it any of this? Was it, did TV come into this? Did MTV Base come into this? Any of that kind of stuff come into it?
We didn't have MTV Base and them things.
Okay.
Top
of the Pops.
Yeah, I remember that vaguely. I think what it was, obviously because at that time, remember, that generation that came over, they wasn't educated. They were labourers. They worked with their hands. So at that moment, we ain't seen no engineers yet. So we ain't seen no engineer driving a nice car. Do you understand? So I think it was just a case of what was in front of us. And because it was, like, money was very problematic. Do you understand? Like, for example, when we were kids, we used to wear these trainers called like Gola, Dunlop and them things. And they will get you bullied. Do you understand? So we already understood that money gets you nice things because we want a pair of Nikes.
Respect.
And them days, I don't know if you remember Reebok Classics. That was,
white ones.
All I wanted was a pair of Reebok Classics. That's all I wanted. So, but you can't go to my family, or my brethren can't go to their family and say, oh, we want a pair of Reebok Classics. You're getting lashes just for asking that question because they were like £60 trainers, you know? And what was the wages back then? Do you understand? So
side point, one of the brothers is from our community, he always says, look, you know what? If somebody's on deen, they need to make Islam look good. Yeah? You know, if they're doing something halal, okay, have a good car, big car, show that off and so on. And I kind of like disagree, you know, with him. Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is, look, your dad's working hard, and that's a halal job. So sometimes we as a community don't glorify what is simple, it's hardworking, it's halal. You know, why can't that simplicity be also kind of like within a Muslim community say, look, that's good. Be like your dad. Be somebody who's doing something with halal. Why can't it be that way?
I think, because we're from the West and the materialistic things are so in front of us, I think it's very hard to tell like a 13-year-old, like, don't worry, you don't need that Xbox or PlayStation. Look at what your dad's hard work. I think it's going to go over the head.
Okay.
Because the mind's not mature enough to understand that. Maybe as you get older, no doubt.
Okay.
But I think at that age, you can't. At that age, you're not going to appreciate integrity, hard work, and stuff like that. I think at that age, when there's people who have and you don't have, you're going to start questioning that. Like, why don't we have it? Do you understand?
So is it the argument of like what they say about in sociology of your environment
100.
becomes your teacher in essence? So it doesn't matter what your household is saying necessarily, but the bigger society is telling you buy, sell, this is good, that is good. And so your parents, in like you said, they become like the foreigners.
Yeah.
And they become your real friends and family, really.
100%. And even when you travel to some of the Muslim countries, for example, and you around people who are poor, their priority is not like the poor person in the UK. The poor person in the UK, he wants an iPhone 13. Do you understand? But he's broke though.
Yeah.
But when they're broke over there, because of the environment they're around, like this materialistic thing is everywhere, but it's much more powerful here because it's just in front of our face,
Yeah, the only thing I would say, look, Abdul Latif, in terms of, environment, of course, is powerful, but, at the same time, you got the deen and you got the Messenger of Allah, extremely poor by all standards, so why aren't we then looking at his standard and him as a role model, some of the companions that were extremely poor and make those a role model? So education, Islamic education and deen is a must. But saying that, Akhi Muhammad,
Can I just close?
Yeah.
There's a hadith, I think is authentic, you can clarify it, about the two fires. That when you live amongst the people that basically are not from your background, one fire will overpower the other fire. Basically meaning, I understand the hadith means that if you're living amongst a culture that is strange to us, and that's the prominent culture, it will overpower our culture. I think that's very true in the West.
I would have said that, but even following on that, the argument I was telling him, that is the sociological argument here. Yeah. When I'm reading those books and they're talking about sociology, that's one of the arguments that they say, your environment, your genes, and something else. But they base that the environment basically has a big impact. I'm saying Islamically, of course, we have our own understanding. And our own understanding, say somewhere in like Somalia or whatever, or another country that's Muslim, Pakistan or whatever, they'll have their own understanding of what a norm is within the context of Islam and the culture. So someone who is, say, so materialistic might be maybe looked at bad there, I don't know. But in the West where we live, that is the old and goal. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So it's very difficult, even for so-called practicing families, where the mum is actually praying and the dad is praying, and they're so-called spiritual, but this child who still feels indifferent to it.
Because, I also feel parents fall short.
100% we do.
They succumb to certain things and they give those
allowances
to their kids where they shouldn't, but it's a deep discussion.
It's a deep one because then if you don't, we had this before, if you don't give it to them, because they watch, I said to you, one of the times I sat with my daughter and I said, let's watch these movies with them. I watched a few movies with them cartoons. Wallahi, I lie to you not. Every single cartoon movie was dissing the dad, was dissing the mum. Don't listen to them. They just want to oppress you. Go run outside. And then the kid makes a mistake and then the parent runs and then, you was always my friend. But the child, all they see is my parents don't listen to me. Try to watch one of them. One of them's called The Croods or something. It's like an old, in the historic, I don't know, the what's the days when back in the day?
Victorian times.
No, before that. The man cave days. It was like that. And the dad is like very harsh. And he tells a story where if you leave this cave, he slaps the wall and he says, you're dead. And if you do this, he slaps all, you're dead. So the child, all he sees is the parent is always telling them not to do things.
But the thing is, providing alternatives.
Over here, of course.
Which we sometimes as parents or parents don't do. But moving on, Mohammed, so that age, 13, 14, again, feel free to say, look, certain things I don't want to discuss. But I'm making an assumption, you're looking at this guy might be a drug dealer. You're saying to yourself, I need to do what he's doing. Did you get into that? Did you get into kind of like shotting drugs or stuff?
At first, it was just like, when we hit the age of like 14, it's like petty crime on the street. I don't really want to go into it because we got arrested for it. But
you get arrested and get charged, just
like this stupid, dumb, cruddy thing, just like real, like, just madness. we do like certain bits and pieces or whatever. But it's just to make £50, 100, whatever, like, you know, anything is
Okay.
money at that time, you know.
You got your crew with you at that time, or you're doing your own
Yeah, it's
thing?
me and a couple of my friends and whatever.
Yeah, okay.
And to be honest with you, I know this sounds crazy, but the objective was Reebok Classics. That was the objective, innit?
Just an item,
Yeah,
basically.
man, I want to read Reebok Classics, so, and whatever. But it was anything to do to make money. Because remember, at them ages, you can't work. You understand? In this country, I think it's like 16 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So even at certain times, like you know, remember back in the day, the passports, they were written. Remember? It wasn't printed, it was writing.
Yeah.
I think I, photocopied it one time, changed the date of birth, and even like worked for like a few months. Anything, it was just to make money, you know? So it wasn't necessarily crime. It was just whatever, but obviously at that age, your options are very limited. So that carried on for like a couple of years. And the drugs really came in between the ages of 15 and 16.
Okay.
That's when they came in, you know, and whatever.
So what, you kind of like, again, shotting drugs on a small level or a big level?
It was at the
that
start,
age,
it was street level, obviously, you know. So
Okay.
that's where everyone begins, more or less, whoever gets into the drug game. Very few people just elevate and go straight.
Okay, just on that point now, before we go further. So, you know, to me, I would say for a Muslim in his conscious or her, you know, that would be clear. Look, it's haram. I can't be taking, I can't be selling, I can't be doing nothing pertaining to drugs and alcohol. You as a 16-year-old youngster, what was going through your mind connected to Deen?
I don't want to answer that question, but at that time, there was no deen in any of us. Like when I say any of us, obviously we know don't eat pork, don't get seen with girls. That was a big thing, girls. So if your family saw you with a girl,
Just don't be seen with girls, yeah.
you're
Don't
getting
be seen.
You're catching some, like I said, you're getting licks. That was, don't eat pork.
Yeah, okay.
But it's crazy how we uphold those laws.
Yeah, I've never tried pork in my life.
No.
You know,
But drug dealing kills people. It's like,
I've always asked myself that question, like why have I never tried pork? Like,
Yeah.
I've tried so many of us, like things on the road, but I never tried pork. And I'll be disgusted if I saw you as a Muslim eating pork.
yeah.
You know, I'll be like, what are you doing? And man's is like,
Fear Allah, taqillah, man.
Fear Allah, bro. This time there, you're
so
stacked up.
so it was this, I don't know, you know, and once obviously you start making money.
And what you saying? You're talking about weed at that moment, or are you talking about classy?
Weed was very, like, we did mess about with it about at the age of 15. But
Talking
it
about
was,
selling?
yeah, we did mess about, sold it a little bit at 15, but there wasn't money in it back then like it is now.
Okay.
So then from there we just went straight onto the hard drugs.
And were you also consuming?
No. From our group of people. So what happened, the age group, the generation that came before us, a lot of the Asians got addicted to heroin. I mentioned this in one of my podcasts.
Yeah.
A lot of the Asians got addicted to heroin. And a lot of the West Indians got addicted to crack cocaine. But we would see that physically.
Okay.
So our generation, alhamdulillah, it didn't affect our generation that bad. There was an odd few here and there, but especially my group of people, alhamdulillah, long term, no one really kind of messed up on it like that. You know, one or two, you know, odd cases, but just generally now, it wasn't a problem for our generation. So,
Were you going to Jummah at that time? I'm still trying to question that. Look, you know what? Was the element of Deen in you at time that you're going for Eid, you're going for Jummah, you're fasting Ramadan?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think there would be any space in the mosque for Jummah because it was just such a small house.
Okay.
And they used to only do one Jamaat. I'm sure we went odd times here and there, but it wasn't like every Friday we have to go Jummah. Because to be honest with you, at that time, we probably didn't wake up to 2-3 o'clock. Do you understand? So it was, maybe we'll go here and there. But like I said, it was like, you see now, you see proper masajid.
Yeah.
It was literally a terrace house. A tiny terrace house. Probably could hold like 60 people in there, at best. So it wasn't like prevalent that this is a mosque, you know, that this is a masjid. And obviously, as children, we didn't have a great experience.
Of the mosque.
You know, they tried their best for what they knew from back home, you know. But like I said, it was not an experience that I would like my kid to go through, basically.
Okay, so moving on in terms of, you know, you're kind of like selling drugs, shotting drugs. How big did you get into the game? What were the problems when you did become big within, let's say, firstly, the Muslim community and also the non-Muslim community?
At first, the Muslim community were in denial, I think, of what was going on. I don't think they wanted to accept that their community, the elders, that were so deeply into it. So, and the other thing was we wouldn't do it in front of people.
Yeah, the sense of respect.
Yeah,
still.
you know, you wouldn't do it if like you see like someone's uncle walking down the road, you ain't gonna do a drug deal in front of him. So it was kind of like, and at the same time, it wasn't hidden because we were driving fancy cars. So people understood that obviously they're 18, 17 years old, they're driving big cars, they're doing something dodgy, but it wasn't like now. Now it's become like, it's a thing that you promote. We wasn't promoting it because we understood that this is something that you got to hide from the elder members, you know, our parents and stuff like that. So even our parents, they never knew exactly what we were doing. They knew they were doing something, but they never had a clue that we were messing with hard drugs.
Okay.
And whatever. I'm sure there was, you know, talk and assumptions or whatever. So, you know, we went through the game. You know, with the drug dealing, you know, there was a lot of allegations from the police and whatever. They said that, you know, that we were getting quite high up locally and whatever, but that's just stuff we denied. But what happens on the street level, when you start selling drugs, obviously the first thing you're going to do is buy nice clothes and nice whatever you can. And then that brings out the hyenas, you know, what we call them on the road. And that's when the problems really start, you know, when...
You're talking about within your own community or within kind of like...
Now, you know, within our own community, we didn't Asians were not really prominent on the street.
Okay.
Do you understand? We were like the first generation to kind of like, to come out, if you understand what I mean. So the road, like I said in the previous podcast, the road was controlled by Jamaican gangs, really. Gangs, figures, and West Indians. So at that time, there was no Africans. You had a few Asians here and there, but generally, no, it was just West Indian street figures and a couple gangs ahead.
So did that create now a tension between yourself, your crew, and let's say, you know, the Jamaican community?
At that time, what also happened, a lot of the Africans start coming onto the road. So problems started between the West Indians and the Africans first. So obviously, you know, race is always going to get used on the street because on the street we don't have any integrity. You'll use whatever you can against the enemy. So when the drama was going on between the West Indians and the Africans, it was kind of played out like a racial thing. You know, they were calling each other names, going backwards and forwards. And at that time, we were kind of just watching from like behind the scenes how this is going to play out. And we became very close with the Africans. So we basically became one clique.
Okay.
In the end, we kind of joined up and we became one clique.
Were they Muslims? Is that why?
Some of them were Muslims, yeah.
Okay.
It was like 50-50 kind of stuff. But what it was, a lot of them had... It was very strange. The first time I saw it, an individual might not be a Muslim, but his dad's a Muslim. Because some of them were like West Africans and stuff like
Nigerian
that. Or their
places.
uncles are Muslim. And it was like... But they had a lot of like, you know, cultural customs that were similar to us. Like cultural customs that were quite similar and things
Loyalty,
like that.
respect, shame, things like
Respect
that.
your elders and things like that.
So you mentioned, Akhi, in terms of there was kind of like a connection between the Africans and the Asians, and that was against the kind of like Jamaican community or the West Indian community. What was happening at that stage?
No, it wasn't like that. It was that connection was like kind of there. Basically, we met at like kind of a house party sort of thing. So I met one of the brothers, like one of the main brothers from their clique.
African brothers.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a house sort of get together. So I was there. I just met him. We started rapping, and then we just linked up from there. There wasn't any that purpose behind it.
Okay.
It was just like, you know, I thought he was cool, and then the people around, like some of them were Muslim. So that kind of like, you know, just established the connection. So that's all it was. Their issue wasn't like, it wasn't. Let me just clarify something. It wasn't like a West Indian African thing. It was a certain clique.
Okay.
It was one certain clique that was from a West Indian background, and it was one certain clique that was from an African background. And it was them, like the drugs on the street level, they was controlled by mainly older West Indians and Jamaicans. But they were very kind of professional, if you understand what I mean. They didn't, obviously there was violence and things sometimes, but because they were older, very mature, they didn't get into like, you know, that's petty street kind of stuff. I'm talking all this stuff I'm talking about is on a street level, like on the street.
Okay.
You know,
what's your age now? 16, 17?
16, 17, 18, around that age,
Okay.
yeah. But this here, when I linked up with the African brothers, yeah, that was 16, yeah.
Okay. Did you have any elders at that time? Or were you the main kind of like...
Nah. So basically, like I mentioned earlier, there was a few brothers who had a potential to become like, you know, figureheads, you could call it. But sadly, they got addicted to A-class heroin. like before we even came on road. So they would have probably been some type of figureheads. Within our community, they were just bullying each other, to be honest with you. So they wouldn't go outside and like do the same thing. You understand what I mean? They would bully just within each other, and outside they were quite muted. You know, so we didn't really have like I said, there was a few brothers who got addicted to A-class. They were serious brothers, but obviously they had their own trials and tribulations. Apart from that, it was on us, basically.
Okay. How did it develop from there? Now, you know, you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. What's your scene, you know, within the road kind of like, you know, community? What are you up to? Did you become big in the game? Were there kind of like gang now, kind of like beefs going on?
Yeah, so obviously once we start making money, you know, the other little cliques didn't like it, you know, because they're not making money and we're making money. So I remember, I mentioned this before as well, I brought this, when I was 16, I brought this 325i Motorsport BMW. And it was quite a big thing for a 16-year-old. I didn't have a license. And one of my so-called enemies, he had just come out of jail. He was a few years older than me. I remember I drove past him on the main road and he looked away because he didn't register with what he saw. And they quickly looked back. And when he looked back, I said to my friend, yo, this is going to be a problem. Because we kind of knew. Because they were still like riding around in push bikes and, you know, doing street robberies. Because I don't know if you remember, but the 90s, that was the era of street robberies. So it's literally rob people on site. Just take whatever they got off them. So we knew it was going to be a problem. And so this was the same clique that was having the little issues with the African clique. So now, you know, we had an issue that started with us and them now. So that kind of went backwards and forwards for quite a few years and whatever. But we were just so money motivated that if drama came, we would handle it, no problem. But our main objective was money. So at that time we had linked up with a number of people in London, you know, North London, some Somalian brothers also. And astaghfirullah, from the street perspective, things were going well. But there was obviously, streets is always going to be drama. A lot of the dramas used to start in nightclubs. A lot of the issues and frictions would stem from nightclubs because the nightclub, everyone's there. Because coming from a certain background of what type of music or stuff we were into, we would only be attracted by certain type of nightclubs. And that was the nightclub that all the other criminals would also be at. So you're going to get some type of static there, you know? So like I said, a lot of the stuff happened in and around nightclubs.
Okay. In terms of, you know, you mentioned you linked up some Muslims from other ends and so on. So there was, especially in the South London scene, there were some brothers on the road, but they had an element of deen in them. So they would pray, they would kind of like fast Ramadan, they would kind of like have certain values, principles. Did that kind of like hit you at that time?
No, that was... The brothers from South London is one of the reasons why I slowly started practicing. But that was a bit later on.
Okay.
That was going on a bit later. That was like 19 roughly, I think it was.
While you were on road or?
Yeah, so basically what had happened is that while I was on road, I went to jail once, you know, came out, it was a short sentence.
What was that for?
It was just I wasn't old enough to drive and stuff. Okay. So I would get pulled over and they give me, and I think in the end I didn't do what they told me, like a community service. I can't remember what it was. It was something linked to my driving though.
Okay.
So they put me in jail. I was in there for like a month or two. It wasn't that serious. I didn't really even care, to be honest with you. So yeah, then I came out from that. I was about 18, I think. 17, 18, and then I came out from that.
Okay.
That was my first time in prison.
How was, from that time, development in terms of, was there any violence involved? Did you get stabbed? Did you stab someone? Did you...
Yeah, there was an issue in prison where I had to stab someone in self-defense. We got questioned for it and everything. Okay. It was like a racist situation. They were being racist, particularly to Asian Muslims.
This was the second time you went into prison?
This was the first time. This was when I was on the short sentence.
Okay.
So there was a whole crew of this. Obviously, they were racist. They were, you know, just started. They were basically what happened. I was the only Asian on the wing, but because the prison was in my local area, people knew me, so I was okay. And I was just going through because I only had like a month or two. But there was a whole little clique of people. I could see they had a problem, but they wasn't saying anything to me. You understand? But I could see there was a bad vibe, but I didn't really play into it because I'm going home. And then there was a brother from Oxford. a Muslim brother, he banged up with me. And I think one day he went out to the exercise yard, if I'm not mistaken. He went out of the cell. He came back to the cell and he had his hand on his face. So what happened? He goes, oh, them dudes punched me. So as they banged us up, I think it was over lunch or something, they just start giving like crazy racial abuse out the window. Like to me, they didn't even have an issue with him. I think the issue was with me because they didn't like my positioning in the prison because I was just kind of skirting through. I knew people from the neighborhood and stuff like that that were on other, tiers and whatever. So they start giving racist abuse out the window. Like they're gonna come get me, packy this and curry this and, the regular. So obviously when they're shouting out the window, the officers are gonna hear it. So what they've done, they moved me from I think it was tier 3 to tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like slightly different. Some jails, like they all mix the tiers. Here in Reading Prison, they didn't mix. So but if you're on the 3s, you only mix with the 3s. If you're on the 2s, you only mix with the 2s. There's a gate in between. So what they've done, they put they put me and him from the 3s to the 2s. But you can still see each other when you come out, but there's a mesh in between. And for the next 2, I think it was 2 nights, just pure racial abuse. All night, like literally till 3 a.m. Like, and the officers didn't really do nothing about it. Because at them times it was different. It was a bit more kind of accepted. So we knew there was going to be an issue here, So an altercation kicked off at dinner time where I ended up stabbing one of the guys. But I still stand by it now. I say I took the shank off him and stabbed him. But he was trying to say, nah, I had the shank. Back on the force. But anyway, we got put in the block for it, they questioned us or whatever. But because he gave so much racial abuse for so long, actually because when we went down to the 2s, there was a few more Muslims. There was 5 of us. 2 of the brothers were from East London, Walmstow. And there was one from Slough and one from Aylesbury. But we were outnumbered badly. But we just you had no choice now. So I kind of gave them like a Malcolm X, motivation talk. So, but it was really nasty abuse though. Like it was, and they went on for hours and hours. And I'm telling you, some people, if you're not Muslim, you will commit suicide over that. Do you know what I mean? But it was like, look, this is defensive now. We got to defend ourselves. So alhamdulillah, I never regret that to this day. Whenever I think about it, I'll be happy.
I can picture you in a bunk bed. It's either the bullet or the block. Which one you got?
Now, and the thing is as well that, when it happened, when it all kicked off, because there was only 5 of us, they were like outnumbered us by at least double, if not more, between 10 to 15 or whatever it was. I can't remember how many people. So when it kicked off, most of his people, the main guy at that clique, they ran. They literally just run off and left him there. And like the main one caught it as well. So that was even better.
This is still the first time you went in?
That was the first. I was basically, so the brothers from East London, they want a murder charge from Walmstow. And they were a bit more...
Asians,
yeah. Okay. They were from Walmstow, they want a murder charge. So they said to me, look, I had about 3 days to go home or something. They said, look, just go home, man. Don't worry about it. But I stuck for that pride. I was like, because it was a bit complicated because on tier 1, there was 2 people on tier 1 that knew people who I was beefing with on road. So they would have told the roads, these guys got chiefed up. So it was like a pride thing as well. I was like, nah, I ain't going home. And at that time, the prison governor gave the extra days.
Okay, give you extra days.
Now it's different. Yeah, now it's different. Now it's outside adjudicator comes in, they could only give you extra days. But then it got abolished in 2002.
Okay.
But then there's a governor who will give you days. So we knew that if we fight, we're going to get days. But if that wasn't a problem, I said, look, I'll take whatever days you want to give me, but we're going to stand up for ourselves. Alhamdulillah, so.
Okay. You've come out from there. What's the road life after that first kind of being in prison? What did you get up to after that? How did it kind of excel, but in a negative way?
Yeah, we just kind of left off. Because my partners who we were on road with, my friends, they were still carrying on doing what they were doing. So I kind of just got straight back into it, to be honest. There wasn't really much difference.
How, what was the time span between you've come out from the first imprisonment and the second imprisonment? And what was the second? Was it drug charges or was it something?
Nah,
Can you speak about it or you can't speak about it?
No, we can speak about it. We were taken on trial for it.
Okay.
So basically we got... so I came out 6 months later. Somebody got shot in the arm. They got shot in the arm and one of his friends got kidnapped. So we were arrested for that. We were charged for it.
Okay.
Yeah, we went on trial for it as well.
6 months after you've come out.
6 months after.
So you're still 18, basically. Or
Yeah,
like-
we're still young offenders. Yeah. So that's happened now. We've gone in court. Alhamdulillah, it was an African judge. I still say to this day, if that judge wasn't African, he would never give us bail. So he gave us all bail, but with conditions. They kicked me out of Reading. I had to go to the Midlands. They gave everyone conditions because we were so young, and the people that were making the false allegations against us were much older, much older than us. And so we got bail. So we were on bail for like a year, and then we had to go trial a year later.
Okay. And when you went in for the trial, what happened?
We were acquitted of shooting the guy, but
Okay.
we got found guilty of kidnapping the other guy.
Okay.
So we had to do a sentence for that, basically.
How long did you do?
We got 2 years.
2 years.
we
2
were-
years straight, you done
yeah,
1 year, half of it.
Half of it, yeah.
And then the license
So
1
the
year.
charges were the shooting, and then separate charge was kidnapping and GBH. But they found us not guilty of the GBH on him.
Okay.
They found us guilty of the kidnapping.
Okay. So now you're in your 20s. You've come out, you're in your 20s.
I'm 19 when I went in.
19.
Yeah,
Come out when
18,
you're
19.
20, yeah?
Yeah, 20, yeah.
After that, what's happened with you in your life?
That was actually when the dean came in my life a little bit, in prison.
Okay.
So what had basically happened is we were back in our local Reading, because that's our local back then. So we go from there, we go on. So I was roughly about 19, or in around that age. So at that time, not every prison had electric in them. Like, when I mean electric, I mean power sockets. They had lights, but there wasn't power sockets. And some prisons still have slop outs. You remember what that is?
Yeah.
So you got
poo
to
out.
like poo in a bucket and stuff like that. And
There's no toilet, basically.
There's no
in your
toilet.
cell.
Yeah.
So one of the main spots where they used to ship us out from was a place called Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was, that pride thing. I said, yo, I ain't shitting no bucket. Like, you ain't sending me there, you know? So me and my Cody said, look, we're not going there. Because I just felt that was a bit...
Degrading.
We're degraded enough here, but you were going to send us there. This is crazy, you know? I thought that was like oppression. And what they done, they deliberately said, yo, you two are going to Portland. So we refused to go. And then they put us in the block because we refused to go to Portland. At that time, what they said happened, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Some people turned up to one of the prison officers' house. Is one of the officers, lived not far from where we're from, and they knocked his windows with balaclavas on and stuff like that. So they held us in the block for 3 weeks, and this is where the dean first came. So I think we were entitled to a religious book in the block, because them days in the block, which is segregation, there's nothing in there. It's just a light, a sink, a toilet. There's no power sockets, no nothing. You're not going to get your radio or anything. So obviously, give me the Quran. So when the Quran they gave me is the first time I ever seen it, English on one side and Arabic on the other side. I've never seen that in my life. So I opened it. Remember, as a kid, I went to the mosque and I could read Arabic, but I couldn't read it. I couldn't even read the first letter. And I was a bit disappointed with myself, you know? I was like, yo, it's deep. And probably the only word I knew was the Aleph. That's it. But that forced me now to read the English. And I've never read the Quran in English.
Sorry, was it English translation or transliteration?
What's the difference?
Transliteration means like you're reading the Arabic but in English. Like
No. It was a translation.
Okay.
So it had the Arabic on one side and the meaning on the other side.
Okay.
So what had happened is, so obviously now, and I think I just started reading it because I had nothing else to do. When I started reading it, it literally blew me away. I actually got so scared, I would close it and just say, I'm not reading this. Because we were living the polar opposite of what the book was saying. And it was very easy to realize, it's not a man who wrote this. It was too deep, you know? And I remember I put it away. I said, nah, just leave it, man. Because I want to go down this road of now, you know, I'm the street dude, you know, I've got a reputation. This is the last thing I feel I need in my life right now. Because it is telling you, like, just pure things about being good to people and whatever. But I will pick it back up and read it again. I think I must have read about 3/4 of the Quran while I was in segregation in English. And it just had this thing in me where I knew this is the truth, man. Like, no ifs, no buts, this is the truth. And like I said, you know, Allah, He has wisdom. He has the wisdom. We don't know why certain things happen. So that was the first thing that happened. I remember, I'm not praying, but I read the Quran now. I don't know how to pray at this time, like what you say. I know the actions, but I don't know what to say in the prayer. So the prison staff felt a bit intimidated. They asked us, where do we want to go? I said, look, I just don't want to go nowhere where I will go shit in a toilet, in a bucket. So they ended up sending me to Guy's Marsh, which was actually quite a nice prison, you know. I thought that's a mad thing to say about prison, but it was
It's better than where you would have
it was
went.
better than where we was. So anyway, so I've gone there now. So when I've landed there, I'm on a bus with 3 other people, 3 white guys. And apparently when you get there, you have to choose someone to bang up with. You have to choose someone to bang up with. So when we were in that prison, there was a white dude there. You know, he was a cool kind of guy. He goes, bang up with me, bang up with me. I was like, cool, I'll bang up with you. So when I banged up with him, you know, we got our stuff, our packs, reception, and the process does. I remember coming out. Wallahi, literally, I walked out onto association, because you walk out your cells and then you come out into association. I could not see one coloured face on the wing. I said, oh my days, what have I done? Because that's not the environment you want to be in. So wallahi, I literally done a U-turn, went back into my cell, got a toothbrush, took out 2 razor blades, and this, because you understood your environment now. And obviously I'm assuming the whole jail's like this. I'm not going to know any better. I've just seen this side of it. So because I came from my local and I had a bit of a reputation, I was okay. But I could feel the vibes though. I could feel the vibes, and someone was saying that. You could see people want to say something, the looks you're getting, but it was okay, alhamdulillah. And there was no, again, there was no power sockets in the cell. So a lot of the time you're spending is just talking to your cellmate. Batteries you get for the stereo, they run out very quickly. You got to send a wire from your light to your stereo. You might end up electrocuting yourself and stupid things like that. So that's when I was in there, on that wing. Then there was another wing called Dorset House. That was another white. So Guy's Marsh is a prison where it's an adult prison, but they had 2 young offender house blocks, Dorset and Anglia. So I was on Anglia, and I heard Dorset had power sockets, and they had TVs there. So one day the prison staff came and said, who wants to go on Dorset House? And literally no one's volunteered. And I found that weird, like there's TVs over there. And I was like, I said, yeah, I'll go. Like, it can't get any worse than this. So anyway, I've gone onto the Dorset House, and I understood why no one put their hand up. Because that wing was all white. The house block, this house block, was all black. The majority, you know? And I was like, oh, I'm cool with it, because the environment we grew up in, it was mixed. So I'm like, this is better than thingy. And that's when I first saw the Brixton brothers. And at that time, in particular, they were all these, they were wearing these black kulfis with the beads.
Okay.
And I didn't understand like what they were doing, because I just thought, that looks kind of deep, innit? And they would wear that really most of the day. I'm not even sure if some of them actually prayed, but they wear that, alhamdulillah.
Mashallah.
Yeah, so, but alhamdulillah, they were good brothers. And they kind of like, we would sit, we would talk and things like that. Because some of them were kind of like, they were very inquisitive, because they couldn't understand, like, because at that time in South London, what they used to call them? Flyovers, isn't it?
Flyovers, the feds.
No, but they used to run in the bank and fly over the counter.
Okay.
They used to steaming. That's what it's called, right? So they used to, that was their hustle. A lot of the youngsters from South London. So they were quite like, you know, they were very like asking questions about the drug game. Like, how do you lot drive these cars, and like, what do you lot do on road? But at that same time, they would talk about Deen. And it was, and I didn't really know much about Deen, but I was like, how can I put it? I was interested from reading the Quran. And they didn't have a lot of knowledge. They would just talk about it from what they understood about it, which was nice, because I've never spoke about Deen before. But at that time, the prison, because it was just so far out in the middle of the sticks, there was no imam.
Okay.
But there was an Egyptian brother in there. This Egyptian brother, mashallah, he was in there for tax evasion, like millions. alhamdulillah, he was Arabic. With a lot of them Arab brothers, they have the foundations. So he was very well spoken. He used to do the khutbah on Fridays. And then afterwards, he would talk to us. But because obviously he was a fellow convict, he used to speak to us not like looking down to us, like on that level, you know? And I remember he had a big impact on us, all of us. And we had a lot of respect for him. And I remember, I will never forget this, he told a joke one day, because he got like 5 or 6 years for tax evasion. And at that time, you had to go for parole. See, now you get automatically halfway.
Okay.
It wasn't like that back then. Halfway, you go for parole. And I said to him for a joke, I said, what happens if you don't get your parole? And then in the Arabic accent, he goes, then the helicopter comes. I was just laughing about it. But he was a real, see the salahs? He didn't, the salahs were on point. He used to pray the salahs or whatever. And he left an impact on me personally. I will never forget that, brother. And I always wish I could find a way to communicate with him. So we would always, talk about deen and stuff like that. But like I said, we didn't really have knowledge. It wasn't like now, books. We didn't have no books, nothing. It was just like in between us. So that's when it first impacted me.
So did you start, you said in the prison before you weren't praying, but you read the Quran. Now you've come to this prison, you met this brother, Egyptian brother, probably other brothers. Did you learn your prayer? Did you start praying?
Yeah, I was praying my prayers, but the prayers, I don't think I was actually reading anything in the prayers, just actions, because I didn't know how to read.
Okay.
And I couldn't learn because I didn't know the Arabic. I couldn't read the Arabic. So I think it was more actions. And I think I maybe knew a few things, when I'm in ruku, what to say and stuff. But generally the whole prayer, I didn't know the whole prayer.
Okay. So when you've come out from that prison, what's happened to roadside in terms of, did you get further involved into the road life? And what's had the deep impact that you felt from prison? What happened with that?
So once I've come out of prison, my next door neighbor, he grew up with us.
TC, that same guy?
No, this is the other side. So that's on TC's on the left and this is on the right side. So he's same age as me.
Okay.
But I come out of prison and Marsha's got a big beard. He's proper on it, fully. And that was the first time someone kind of was speaking to us from our background, but with a little bit of knowledge. Because he used to go to Birmingham.
Was he in the road life before or no?
Affiliated. So he knew everything what's what.
Okay.
He knew what's what, what's not. So he knew. And he would go to Birmingham and go to the bookstores, get the books and stuff like that. And then he would explain about Islam and, how culturally that we didn't learn it the right way. And now it just became even more interesting. This stuff is deep, And because we had a lot of cultural things, as you know, which would be off-putting to a lot of people from outside the culture. And obviously, because we weren't feeling it anyway, so when he was telling us the pure Islam, it was it was very interesting. And he was someone that would study the English books and read them, and Ahmed did that, and he would go through all that, and then he would tell us, and then he would basically give us dawah. Also, we didn't know it was dawah at that time, but he would give us dawah, and I had a keen interest in what he was saying.
Okay. And following it up, did you follow it up and say, look, well, I need to now pray, I need to do certain things, I can't do certain things, or what happened?
Then after about 6 months, I was trying to pray 5 times a day.
Okay.
I was. It was very strange. So I'm trying to pray 5 times a day, but my brethren's are in beef. You understand? So I'll be coming at the masjid, for me, your beef, come quick, And, one thing, this is advice I give to a lot of brothers that come from that life. You can never balance road with Islam. Sometimes you're trying to balance it out. It would never balance.
Yeah.
It's going to, if you keep even one toe in that game, it's going to drag you back. So literally I'll be coming out the mosque, and I'm still young now, I'm 19, 20. I will come out the mosque and literally my brother's phoning me, your beef, hurry up, come. And you feel at that age you can't say no. You have to go as my brethren. And I'm still kind of affiliated, obviously. I am still affiliated on the road doing what we're doing, but just got a bit of more understanding of the deen now. And so that's what. Now, and I was reading, that's when I probably first started actually reading translated books.
Okay.
I think the first books were Ahmed did that. And there was a sheikh back in the day, I don't know if he's still about now, Ahmed Ali from Bradford or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
He had this tape about dying while you're high. I will never forget that tape. You know, they literally, the brothers are smoking. We put out the
Just to listen to it.
like that's how shook it got you.
Okay. As you're listening to it, turn it off.
Yeah, like because it was like, right, it's deep, you know. So even though we weren't implementing the stuff, the knowledge was slowly coming.
Slowly coming into your hearts.
Yeah, it was slowly coming. I remember his name was Ahmed Ali. He's had loads of tapes.
Yeah.
Loads of tapes, different subjects, you know. And I would have like a tape or two in my car, listen to it and stuff like that.
So moving forward, because obviously we can go too long into the road life, was there a point you got to where you said, forget this?
Not for a long time it was.
Okay, so
at
we're
that
talking
time,
how many years? Because you was 20 years saying
I was
around.
20, so it was really from there 26 really.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there was a lot of trials, tribulations. I went back to prison a few years later.
What was that, drug charges or?
Yeah, drugs charges and a whole bunch of different things. So
Long sentence, short sentence?
I'd done just under 4 years
Okay.
on that stint. So I was in there for quite a long time. So I went in 22 and then came out 26.
So that was the kind of one that maybe...
Yeah, so when I've gone on that one now, I remember every time I've gone in jail now, it's madness. The same madness on road is the same madness in jail. Because, I saw your podcast with Nicole Leon.
Yeah.
And he said this thing in there where he said that he was basically saying, look, if you're someone from your area and you're not really about that life, you're going to get found out. Somewhere along the line, you're going to, and that's so true what he said. So when the attitude we had was that if I'm going to act like this on road, I'm going to act like this in prison. So I'm not going in prison to go get a DCAT. There was none of that, like getting a DCAT or whatever.
You have to be in a badness.
Yeah, so I spent like quite a long time behind bars, and it was just to basically just road but in prison. Whatever scheme you come up with, you get something thrown on the wall. If beef comes, you just handle the beef. Just that was just the continuation, and kind of looked at as like part and parcel of the contract you've signed with road, basically. Like I'm speaking like metaphorically. It was like there was I'm in prison now. When I was in prison, you get guys that say, if I get out, I'm gonna sort my life out. And the day they land, they're back on the road. There was no sincerity in their words. I never had them words. It was like, when I come out, I'm gonna go hard again.
Okay.
Every time it was like that. So this time, when I went to prison, it was adult prison. So the dean was much more prevalent in adult prisons.
Mature.
Yeah, it's much more mature and whatever.
One prison, or they changed you around?
Yeah, I went on a little tour, yeah. I went to different prisons. But no matter where you went, kind of long as it's, down, like, below Birmingham, there's going to be Muslims there. Do you understand? So, yeah, so that's when a lot of reading I done. And not just Islamic books, just generally. Spend a lot of time in the block and on basics. So basics is they take your TV and all this stupidness. So I did a lot of reading or whatever, and I think that was something that was helping me, mentally. Okay. And then what happened one day, there was a book, and I mentioned this before, it's called Ibn Qayyim's Characteristics of the Hypocrites. I still can't remember how I got this book, because you couldn't really send books from road because they would censor them. So anything they thought is, this, you understand? So it was very restricted to what you can get, like cleared. So I can't remember how I got this book. It's possible it even could have been in a cell that I moved into. I remember it was a very small book. I remember I read the book, and literally as soon as I finished reading the book, I got up and prayed Salah. I made wudu, because when I was reading the book, I was like, am I a hypocrite? So that book had a massive, even though I wasn't still like fully, I'm still in it, knee deep. But that book changed something in my life. And then I started praying in prison like 5 times a day. In prison, I'm a local prison, and because of our positioning in the prison, I would lead the salah on the wing and things like that. Because I learned how to pray in that over the years before I went back this last time. And then we start giving dawah in there to the best of our ability. Alhamdulillah, a few bros took the shahada in there as well. And then what I would do for them, I would write, because they couldn't pray. I didn't know what to do. What should I tell these guys? I never had no communication with no scholars and stuff like that inside prison. So I'd get a piece of paper and cut into a long strip, and I would write the salah in, what's it called it?
Transliteration.
Transliteration, yeah. So, like,
In English.
So I don't know if it was right, and I said it was put in front of you and just read it as you pray, and these are the actions and stuff like that. So it was something that was definitely, it was coming. But at the same time, you're in an environment with a lot of crud going on, a lot of things going on or whatever. So it's very difficult to explain, because even though you're praying 5 times a day.
So you were, at that time, you started praying 5 times a day in prison?
Maybe I struggled with the Fajr prayer, but I was praying, because on the wing, on our local prison, I would lead the Salah.
Okay.
And then I remember the officers were trying to put an end to it, saying, no, you can't lead the Salah. You can't pray on the wing, and all this stuff they were trying.
Do you have an imam in there, in that prison?
The less said about him, the better. Because remember, some
are government.
some are government, they're not going to let anyone in there.
Okay.
That's a whole other podcast for that. But alhamdulillah, may Allah bless them, But yeah, so we were just getting our knowledge that time from like tape smuggled in, books and stuff like that. And obviously that's when, you meet a lot of the brothers from London on their stuff and whatever. But alhamdulillah, there was a unity definitely in prison, and I mean in a good way. That Ramadan will come, the brothers will eat together and things like that,
What year are we talking now?
Between, say, 05 and 08.
So that's it. Even on road, that's when Islam was kind of, in London especially anyway, was becoming very big.
At that time, there was a lot of there was brothers who turned Muslim. There wasn't a lot of knowledge, so they were maybe doing things that were not from the religion. As to alhamdulillah, I never got caught up in that. There was something told me from my fitrah that, this does not sound right. Whatever. My thing was really, pray 5 times a day and try to somehow leave this road. That was really my concentration.
So when you've come out now you're about 26, yeah?
Yeah, 26, yeah.
Did you go back into the road life or no?
Same day.
You went back into it?
Yeah, same day.
I'm surprised. He's like, what?
I'm thinking,
that didn't help you.
Imam Ibn al-Qayyim's making salah, leading salah.
You know what it is, when you're in a certain position and you have people that rely on you, you feel you owe them. If you understand what I mean, it is a thing of. But the thing that changed at this point, I knew what I was doing was wrong.
Okay.
Now I knew without a shadow of a doubt this is wrong. But we would make crazy excuses in our heads just to keep going. And I came out. Actually, maybe not the same day, the second day. Just got back into it. And the thing is, but when I came out now, I had stopped smoking weed, completely. I said, look, I'm not smoking weed. And I wasn't really a drinker anyway, from before. I had a drink here and there, but I wasn't really a drinker. So that wasn't really an issue. So me and my friends would be parked up talking about some crazy conspiracies, yeah? And I say, oh, wait there 1 sec. So I'd jump out the car and I'll start making salah. And they would look at me like, what is this guy? They couldn't understand, what is he doing? You were just in the car talking about all types of madness, and now you're making salah. So I've told the story before my previous podcast that one time we went to a nightclub. So the nightclub's on one side of the road and I've got a hotel on the other side of the road, a hotel room. It's summertime and I'm in the club, but I know it's salah time. Isha, you can pray Isha quite late. And I was like, yo, you're in the nightclub, you ain't prayed Isha. So I've told the story. I went back to the hotel, I prayed the salah and I came back.
Inshallah.
Done
tahajjud, done your witr, and then came back.
But you're getting pulled.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Like shaitan is saying to you, look. And like I said, sooner or later, one of the others was going to suck me back. There was no ifs and buts about that.
Okay.
But now it was like a constant battle between right and wrong within your mind.
Yeah.
It was like a constant. You look for justifications and things like that. And it was just a thing where I knew in the back of my mind I had to make a decision somewhere along this line.
Yeah.
To walk away. And I'll be honest with you, part of me didn't want to leave because there was a part of me, see, road is a contradiction. Let me make that clear. So on one hand, I have to say that I wanted to leave the road. But on the other hand, I wanted to stay. Because road is a contradiction. There's no answer.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed being on road. When you play a certain position, it's like you're a celebrity. You go places, you get treated a certain way or
I
whatever.
think, with a lot of brothers, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
the brothers who
exactly.
are still there. It's that basically.
You don't want to leave
that
because of
nafs,
what they've built up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
You built up such a dynasty in your own little bubble.
Yeah, and the
that
thing is, if
think
you
to
leave,
that,
then you know
you're
what?
gonna be treated like that no more.
Yeah, so that's the fights
It's
the
the ego,
man.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the ego.
It's an ego as well, but it's very addictive. If you understand what I mean. It's very difficult to explain. They call it like street fame or hood celebrities or whatever. But it's very addictive. When you walk into a nightclub and people are literally saying, "Oh, my man's here, he's here in the club." Like, them things are very addictive to some people.
Yeah.
Going outside a club, in a Range Rover or whatever. That's just that thing, it's very hard. And remember, a lot of these people who get that feeling is because they came from nothing.
Yeah.
You understand? You go to some of these millionaires, they're not going to understand. They don't care about that feeling. You understand? But when why is it a lot of roadmen would buy a £50,000 car before they think about buying a house?
You still live in parents' houses.
Do you understand what I mean? So it's just a thing to roll with. Like I said, it's a contradiction. It's very hard to explain. I'll be very honest with you. There's no success in that life.
Yeah.
But I miss it to this day.
You miss it?
100%. There's a part. I'll give you the only example I'll give you. Imagine you eat chocolate cake and you like chocolate cake and they tell you could never eat it again.
And it keeps giving you that belly, man.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
keep running back to it.
The milk cake for you, man.
So it's like I said, shaitan.
Something that's bad for you, basically. You keep coming back to it.
Yeah. Shaitan knows, this person here, he might not make shirk. He might not make bidah. But you know what? He's got a weakness for music, or he's got a weakness for this, so let's
use that against
him.
Yeah.
That shaitan is patient. So when I say I miss it, not in a way that I'm tempted to go back. Not that, for example, if I watch a certain movie,
it reminds you.
It will do something to me. There's one particular movie, every time you watch it, the brother's smiling. Look, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because, I start feel like we played a certain position on the road that not everyone plays. And when you play that position, you really feel like some type of president. You feel like, because in reality, when I come off this road, I'm a nobody.
Yeah.
And this is everything to me. That's why you think people, they die for that lifestyle.
But do you think deen-wise, Sahaba, before Islam, Omar, Khalid, they had certain positions. What did the Messenger of Allah do? It's fine, you've come towards deen, you can use your skill and position, but in another way.
Of
Please
course,
Allah.
100%. Yeah.
And I think that's where sometimes the shortcoming is from Muslims in position of leadership, imams, masajid. They're not able to guide youngsters and use their skills in the right way.
That's true, yeah.
But when did you decide, okay, it's a cut-off now? Yeah, I can't have 1 foot here and 1 foot here. I'm making my salah, I'm reading the Quran, and you know what? This is completely going, opposing Islam. When did that, decision come?
So I remember one time I think I was driving to Leicester to drop some money off. I'm pretty sure it was Leicester. So I was driving, trying to justify it in my head. I was saying, okay, if I stop making zina, if I stop smoking cigarettes, if I stop this, but I'll just continue selling drugs. That's, I was looking for some loophole. Obviously, there was no loophole. And as I was on that journey...
How old are you now?
26 still.
Still 26?
This was very soon after I came out of prison. Very soon.
Okay.
I said to myself, there's no loophole. Is this or that? And one thing I understood, if I die in this state, this is I was regularly wearing a bulletproof vest because, certain statics and whatnot. That's a regular thing when I used to go to nightclubs and stuff like that would have. So you knew that you could die for this life. So I understood, had a little bit of knowledge enough to know that if you die in this state,
SubhanAllah,
there ain't no coming back from that. And I could beef and war with anyone out here, but I can't war with my Lord. There's no, there's no loophole. So it's make a decision. So I think it was on that journey where I kind of finally made the decision. I was like, yo, I'm done. And it was it was so strange. My brethren was saying, he's gone mad. Literally, they were saying because literally after that journey, I think I took my SIM card out and just threw the SIM card away. So no one's got contact with me now. So they're phoning people linked to me. Yo, where's my man? And at that time, I'm owed a lot of money in the road. And it's just to cut off like that, people were just kind of very baffled at what's happened. And at that time, I was living with a girl I stuck with outside marriage. I remember I went back to the house and I said, yo, you got to bounce. She's like, what? I said, yo, you got to bounce. Because I can't do this, innit? Or you can't live here. And whatever. And it was like an instant thing. Like a 24-hour, I was smoking 20 to 30 cigarettes a day because all my friends smoked weed. And because I wasn't smoking weed at that point, I was smoking a lot of cigarettes. And I stopped smoking cigarettes the next day. It was very strange.
So from that time, 26, that's alhamdulillah, yeah?
Alhamdulillah, there's been a million and one trials since then. But one of the things that I knew I had to stop is selling drugs. Because I'm telling you right now, you cannot meet Allah with that sin. Because people don't understand the deepness of that sin.
Yeah.
That's one of the worst ways as a human being, and I will say this out, this is my opinion, is one of the worst ways as a human being to make money. One of the worst ways. Is in the top 10 at least. And I said to myself, no matter what I am, like, I don't look at myself as I'm on deen or I'm somebody. Yeah. I'm someone who, alhamdulillah, is trying to do my 5 prayers every day. Who's trying and struggling sometimes, have weaknesses, maybe it might be music or this or that, have my weaknesses. But I said this drugs thing, it's got to get done because I cannot meet Allah with this sin. And the other thing about drugs is, look, it's like this now. If you're someone who's got a kilo in stash somewhere, you might not have that kilo on you. If you die as a drug dealer.
You're accountable, yeah.
You're accountable, and someone's going to take that kilo, break it down, and put it out on the road. You might be held accountable for that.
So this was my, when I initially mentioned, it's the most filthy profession anybody can have. The harm, the destruction of society and lives that it causes. How can a Muslim, whether that Muslim is weak in Iman or not, but be doing this? That was my initial question. Why would a Muslim, even the ego might be there, but there's limits, Akhi. There's limits to that ego, especially for somebody who has La ilaha illallah in their heart.
But this is when it comes down to like the environment you grew up with. Because in, like, for example, like a lot of the Christians, for example, now, they don't really have understanding of the religion. Like what it is, what it's not. If you ask any Christian who says he's a Christian, they couldn't tell you the basic things. At that point, if you told me what's Tawheed, I can't answer that. I didn't even know there was a word called Tawheed existed when I was 16 years old. So being Muslim for me was just, I'm a Muslim.
Okay. It's a culture.
It's a culture.
Literally. You don't take it that deep.
You don't take it that deep. So there was no you're 16, 15, there's no fear there, and you're not contemplating God. Because we didn't come from an environment where we contemplate God. The coolest guys on the block, we looked like they're the ones that you should follow because they've got something and you've got nothing. So I think here, our dynamic in the West is very different to the dynamic in Muslim countries. Because they go to school, they have some sort of Islam in the schools and things like that. Here we have nothing, it's just go to the masjid at 4 o'clock. That's it, and we're going there catching lashes. And you don't even understand why you're catching lashes. You're catching lashes for talking to your friend. That's what you're catching lashes for. And you're like, 100%. So he's like, do you really want to go there? Yeah. So alhamdulillah, we've come a long way now. Alhamdulillah. So
just one final point I wanted to just ask in terms of, this is not in a kind of like negative, it's not to say, look, Muslims need to beef non-Muslims, but there should be a concept of wala. Alhamdulillah, South London Brothers initially, the first batch of South London Brothers had this concept of, what, if it's a Muslim, alhamdulillah, we're cool. Was that in your era and generation within your kind of like ends and areas?
No, 100%. Back when I was growing up, you would try very hard not to beef with another Muslim. It's the streets and things happen on the streets, obviously, between kids and whatever. But generally, there's something that was always with man. Okay. So even though we were criminals, like if something happened in the Muslim community, some females got harassed, and it did happen. Racist people, whatever. Like it was the street dudes that handled the issues. Like anything to do with that, like some sort of racist guys in the neighborhood or at the local pub or whatever, is the street dudes are handling that. Okay. And they got handled, and that happened many times. So this is one of the things, alhamdulillah, with us, that even though we were what we were, like if even non-Muslims, it didn't have to be Muslims. If someone is really weird because we were ourselves oppressors in a way, selling drugs or whatever, but we differentiated between road guys
and
civilians. We differentiated between them. So if a civilian, like, had an issue or if someone's trying to oppress them, like we went down with like burgling houses and stuff like that. Like you couldn't come in a neighborhood and burgle a house. Because we just looked at it like, yo, that's a civilian.
Some values and principles were still there.
It's very hard to explain because, like I said, it's a contradiction. You kind of make morals as you go along. Alhamdulillah, some of them are good, some of them are bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you have to go through a journey to learn certain things, because I believe if I didn't go to prison, I might not learn about Islam. But the way I should have learned about it, maybe. So,
that's what R.A., what did he say? He said Qadr. Because that's when he took Shahada.
In prison, yeah.
In prison, became a Muslim from there. So, same thing is Allah used that for you to go there and come towards deen and start your salah and start learning. So everything is
Allah says it in the Quran as well, innit? It says what? You may think something is good for you, but it's bad for you. You may think something is bad for you, but it's good for you. And Allah knows. Do you get what I mean?
Like, what you said, that it's an ayah in the Quran, right?
Yeah, it's a verse.
So exactly, like, you don't know the wisdom of God. Sometimes, especially with a lot of ex-street dudes, like when they get tested, their first thing is to revert back to what they used to do. Like they might have financial problems. And so, now I'm not going to do nothing. I'm just going to sell drugs. That drugs leads to a nightclub. That nightclub leads to a girl. And the next thing you know, 3 months later, you're fully back on there. And I've seen this happen maybe hundreds of times. And this is one of the big things that sometimes you don't know what's good for you. Allah knows what's good for you. Even since I've left that road, I've had crazy trials and tribulations. But this time, I'm dealing with them with a little bit of deen.
Yeah.
With a little bit of understanding and whatever. But if you don't have that basic knowledge, you're going to deal with things recklessly as they come.
What are you doing in terms of finance-wise now?
This is one thing. When people come off the roads.
Yeah. That's a fitna, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah. So it's like, I'll do a course, do this, do that. There's no one answer for everyone. Everyone has their own talents. One person might be good with his hands. He could go physically, be a labourer, be a plumber, whatever. That might be his thing. Another guy might not be money motivated. He might not be good with numbers. So being like a hustler in a halal way might not be his thing.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't understand money like that. So with me, since I was young, I had this weird thing about numbers. Like, I make my calculations very different to how everyone else makes their calculations. And in maths, I was in the high group, and the teacher used to say to me, look, focus. But my mind was, gone by that time, And alhamdulillah, my son has that same thing now. The teacher told her, look, he's excelling in maths. You need to try to do something outside. And she was kind of surprised. It must be something in the genetics. So I was very good with numbers from Jahiliyyah. I'll give you an example. I went to the Middle East. I lived there for 3 years in the Middle East. So while I was in the Middle East, obviously I don't speak no Arabic. I speak a little bit now, but at that time I didn't speak no Arabic. And the numbers are written different there.
Okay.
So everywhere I'm going, I'm feeling it robbing me. I feel I'm getting jerked. Because sometimes the price is on the thing, on the item, I'm saying, how much is that? And he knows, my man's a foreigner. And I feel they're ripping me off. So I went home, I printed out the Arabic numbers. And I got to a point after about 2 or 3 weeks, I could say any Arabic number, 1 million, 2 million, 100,000, whatever. So I remember I went back to the same shop. I thought, let me go back to the same shop, let him know now, because I felt he kept trying it with me in the souk, So alhamdulillah, so I have a thing about numbers. So I always look for opportunities, whether it's to renovate a house, someone selling a car, or whatever it may be.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah, cryptocurrency, furniture. I've dealt with. So it's like I said, you have to. My talent was always hustling. That was always my talent. That was from the roads, but we just did it in the wrong way. And trust me, a lot of brothers have left that life and made more money legally than they did in that life.
That's something that you say always, isn't it? There's always kind of like ways of making
100%. I always say whoever was smart on the streets is smart when he leaves the streets. And whoever was strong in the streets, when they leave the streets, they're strong as well. Whatever talent you actually had in the streets, when you turn it legit, you have that tenfold.
100. A lot of people I know now that are still stuck in that game, they don't want to be in the game. But it's how do they maintain their lifestyle?
Yeah.
And you start. So the first thing, when I left the road, I had a car. It was like a 5 litre. It was a big car. But logic told me, because I was spending about £2,000 a month on petrol. So logic told me, sell the car. Because for now, how are you going to get £2,000 to pay for petrol every month, So I sold the car straight away. So I understood straight away I got to
downgrade slightly.
Not even slightly, majorly. I will start downgrade. Because you got to figure out your next step. And sometimes that might take a little while. Because nothing, you know what it is? See on road, we're used to overnight money. Like literally, we could be sitting here right now and we're all broke. There's a brick on the table. And tomorrow, every man's got thousands in their hand. Literally tomorrow. And that's not even an exaggeration. So because on the street, you're so used to instant money. And in the real world, it doesn't really work like that. There's some type of process you've got to go through. And I think that's what a lot of brothers struggle with, is that transition from here to there. And then not just that transition, then maintaining that transition and not going backwards. And like I said, once you come off, there's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations.
100%.
I think on your part, because, you've come from that lifestyle, alhamdulillah, deen-wise, dunya-wise, achieve something outside that lifestyle, advising those brothers that are still in that game, those youngsters that want to get into that game or might be in the game. Look, this what you can make money, but you know what? It can be halal and pleasing to Allah. And be ibadah too. It can be worshipping Allah. Making money. It can be ibadah if you have the right intention for it.
That, like I said, I don't look at myself as a role model for anyone. I could be caught up in some jam tomorrow, like literally, because you come from a lifestyle where you move on, people don't forgive. So you don't know who might come out the cracks tomorrow. You don't know. That's just how, because when you were knee deep in a lifestyle, Abu Bakr, I remember he said to me one time, he goes, you've forgotten, but don't think people have forgot. He said that to me one time, and it's true. So I'm not trying to be anyone's role model, but what I would tell people, you see that lifestyle that we got so sucked in by, the foundation of that is drug dealing. So even if the person's not selling drugs, they're robbers who rob drug dealers. So roughly that's that life. So I just tell the brothers, you see what? You don't want to meet Allah as a drug dealer, because the sin is on so many people. You understand? Because remember, when that brick gets broken down, it gets broken down to £10 shots. How many 100 or 1,000 people? You've got to think about mothers, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen people spend their kids' gyro money on that hit. I've seen it. So no one could tell me, nah. People use excuses like, I'm going to smoke it anyway. So that's some mad excuse. Like, are you going to tell that excuse to Allah on the Day of Judgment? So that's my thing. If you could solve that problem and understand the severity of drugs, because one of the things that I can't even lie about, we absolutely destroyed our neighborhood with drugs. We literally turned it into a front line. And it was never the same again. It was never, ever the same again. And now I see it with my own eyes. I done a podcast with Sheikh the Baker. And he linked me in my neighborhood. He said to me, Akhi, why is there so many drug addicts around here? And I was, if you came here 25 years ago, you would see none of that. But we turned it into that. We turned it into a front line, basically.
Destruction.
Yeah, it's destruction. So you have to, if you don't make Tawbah, you're going to have you're probably going to have to answer for that.
And that's why, look, the Prophet, when he said, look, la'an Allah al-khamar, Allah is cursed intoxicants and the like. What did he say? The one who makes it, the one who pours it, the one who, gives it, the one who takes it, the one who buys it, the one who sells it, the one who carries it. Everything connected to it, it's cursed by Allah.
Cursed by Allah,
so it's a deep thing.
I'll tell you something really deep. When I was, just after I left the road, there was a brother who was in prison with us. He's from East London. He was getting some stomach, he was in there on a conspiracy of drugs charge. He was waiting trial. He was getting some stomach pains, and it was going on for quite a while. After, I left the road or whatever, I got a phone call, say, yo, my man's in hospital. He's about to die. I said, what? I said, he's in prison. He said, no, he's been transferred to hospital. They've let him out in the compassionate grounds. They've given him like a few days to live. So I remember, even when I think about it now, it gives me goosebumps. So when I remember, I said, cool, let's go see him. So I remember when I walked into the hospital, and I just had this feeling inside, man. I can't really describe it. Saw him on his bed. And, even though he was going in and out, the throes of death. 1 minute he's with it, next minute he's not with it. And stuff like that. He recognized me straight away, And there was some other, I didn't know what to say to him because this is the first time I'm in a situation like this now. I was just looking like, just saying, say la ilaha illallah, because they said he could die at any time now, anytime. There was 2 other brothers there. I remember he told the brothers, I can't remember exactly what he told them, but he said something like, he's got £50,000 put somewhere, take it and give it away to charity and whatever, because at that point, nothing mattered. Nothing mattered to him. And I just remember looking at that, say, alhamdulillah, that came away from that. Because like I said, when that moment comes, that money ain't going to mean nothing. Especially if you acquired it in the way you acquired it and stuff like that. So people need to understand, man, that you see, death, we are not in control of death. Any moment that could come and then you're done. So increase your chances of going out in a good way. Then if you're like I said, if you're selling drugs, you're a drug dealer while you're sleeping, because your product is still out there. Whether it's stashed up, bagged up, whatever, your product is still there. So you're still dying as a drug dealer. So you need to think about, really logically, is this, it's like a gamble. Is this worth the gamble?
Yeah.
It's like going to a casino and knowing 100% you're going to lose your money at some point, but you don't know when, but you just keep playing, and then, and then bam, you lose everything. And that's, with life, So
Becomes a fool's game.
Exactly.
All right, lastly, because we've gone way past our time, but khair. And lastly, you've kind of done it anyway, giving advice, but to yourself now, we ask usually, like at your age now, what is like the key thing you would have told yourself in those young ages, 14, 15, 16, that maybe would have transitioned you in a different path? You've talked about obviously some of the things you would have said now, but is there something key that maybe you would have heard at that time or would have seen at that time that would have possibly steered you to a different angle?
Number one, you have to have some knowledge of your religion, of your Lord. Look at it from 2 aspects. We're on like on a Muslim podcast. So when you're talking to non-Muslims, you can't approach them in the same way as Muslims because, they have a slightly different understanding. But from an aspect of a Muslim, how can you worship without knowledge? You can't worship without knowledge. You don't understand who Allah is. Why am I praying? Well, like if you ask most people, what are you saying in your salah? They don't even know what they're saying in the salah. They don't know what the Fatiha, what it means. So you have to have some basic knowledge about your religion. One thing about traveling to the Middle East, I'll tell you one thing what I noticed there that I haven't really seen here. Prayer there is adi. It's like normal for people. It's not something that they have to struggle to go do. A man will be working in McDonald's. Salah time comes, he knows what he's got to do because they've raised up in that environment, in that culture. But for where we come from here now, is like a mission to do that. Because we don't see it around us. It's not prevalent. So I feel that the kids before they get to that road age, when they're going to go on the streets, from a young age, you have to establish some type of religion within the home. You see, with my son, I have a rule that he is not allowed out of my eyesight if he's outside. So yeah, he could go to the park, but I got to be able to watch him in the park. Like you see, like astaghfirullah, but Tupac, he said one time, he said, "Mama sent me to go out and play with the drug dealers." Like he didn't mean that literally, but as kids we would just go out and we're literally playing with criminals. So with my son now, like once he turns a certain age, it's his choice. But for now, pray 5 times, when he gets to a certain age, when you pray 5 times, you have some understanding of Allah, and you ain't running around on the roads. You ain't going up and down the street. You ain't doing that. You understand? Because the risk is too high. They could get caught up this easy outside. Like just one wrong friend, one wrong move or whatever. Because remember, the environment, look, you bring your kids up in Saudi or Egypt or whatever, they're not getting shanked around the corner. They're not selling drugs and stuff like that. But here, one thing we have to, I'm going to tell you one thing that's massively changed between now and then. When we were growing up, music was not like it is now. Certain people listen to certain types of music. If you listen to Nas or Biggie or Tupac, is a certain type of person who listens to that music. Now the music has become just normal everyday music. Like you'd walk into McDonald's or JD Sports and you hear drill music. So the music has become a part of their culture.
For everyone.
Yeah. It's got similar tunes basically. You don't see a punk group there. You don't see this. They all listen to similar music.
The music now is transcended colour. It's gone past that now. So that's another thing where the music thing you have to really try. It's hard because computer games on the computer games or whatever. So that's something. So if I could go back now, the only thing that I could really realistically say is to have some type of knowledge about God, because we didn't have any knowledge about God whatsoever. But if you stop the average 40-year-old Muslim on road, 50, said to him, "What's Tawheed?" Do you think he knows the answer? I doubt it very much. Most people they know the answer to that. You understand? So how can you not get attracted to the dark side when you don't know about the straight path, the light path? You understand what I mean? So it's deep, and it's deep because when you're young, you're very impressionable. So the way, especially now, now to be a child, it must be very difficult for them because everything is in their face. Instagram, Snapchat, they're seeing everything in their face. So I think I don't know, the advice is easy to say it, but can you get through to them? And like I said,
how you even get through to them, because you said you had Islam, but it was cultural. They was pushing you away. So even then, it's how you say it.
I'll be honest with you. I would personally say 75% of practicing people, the kids are not practicing. I don't know many people who are practicing their kids are practicing. It's the odd one here and there. The kids are not practicing. Actually, I know people that are they're like Muslims, they're writing other Muslims off. And their son's on Facebook smoking weed. Just that. And he grew up around Islam. So it's like I said, and sometimes some of the ulama say that the solution is to bounce. To go to a better environment. So maybe that's really the answer. Allahu alam, I don't know, but I think here is very difficult, especially for the younger generation now.
I would say the hope though in that even is that me, you, and I'm sure many people watching this even was once upon a time rocked, crazy. People would say they will never change. You know what I mean? I know some brothers who've become Muslim because they've seen me practicing Islam.
100%.
And they'll say, if he's practicing and he was that bad, I can be a better person. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So I think the hope is that, yes, my hope is personally that it's a stage. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, it's a stage that they're going through. And inshallah, through some form of patience and teaching and even things like this, slowly they come to the other side. Because like you've come to the side after 26. Some people are still in it 24, 23. Some people are still in it till 30 and come out when they're 32. I think there's going to be a stage. It's just to have that hope that one day that they get to that stage and they come to the other side, inshallah. What I would also say about the Salah things, because we just went to Umrah and we went to Saudi and these places. And even though the Salah for us was amazing, like literally Salah was easy for me, late night prayers, everything was just calm. But I would say the sweetness coming back here is higher than it was there, in the sense that here I know no one is really praying. So when I'm doing it, there's kind of like, there's a special thing about just me doing it. Whereas there I saw many people praying and they was praying like Speedy Gonzalez, like literally pecking away. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Not everyone, but there was a decent amount of people that I saw praying and it didn't look like the salah was there. It was just, I'm doing it for the sake of everyone's doing it.
See, with me, it's different. When I'm there, I feel my iman is higher. I feel it feels better because here, you know, like because you're moving about so much and you don't hear the adhan. Like a lot of the time, you're praying at home. You're praying. So sometimes, see, in the Muslim countries, you hear the adhan. You know, salah time, go. And one other thing I just want to leave it with quick, you know, especially a message to the youngers and stuff, that, you know, road looks very attractive. And sometimes, you know, it can be attractive. It can be fun. I'm not going to lie to them and say you're not going to have fun. You probably will have some fun. You probably will make some money and whatever. But what that takes from your soul, you leave a part of your soul on that road. I mean, if you're really on road and you're never going to get that back, is something when you're 16, 17, 18, you don't realize it. But as you get older, you know, you realize really what you have involved yourself in. And like I said, there's a lot of road is evil. And a person stays on that for so long, it might just consume you.
100%.
And you might leave in that, you know, in that state.
And even if you leave though, there's the PTSD effect. You know, a lot of people don't talk about that. Like once you leave, there's the effect of the things that you went through. So many people that have left now, they still walk as if someone's going to hurt them or do something to them.
That's just normal, man. Every dream I have is about someone killing me. I never have good dreams. When I do have one, it's about someone trying to lick me down and whatever. This is standard. Like, you just learn and understand, look, it's because of the life you lived. You understand what I mean or whatever. So it's just one of them things that's just going to be how it is, you know. I know people that when they go home, they don't just park their car and just walk inside the house. You know, you circle the block, you just make sure you know what you're doing. Like, I was with a brother before, I was going too close to cars behind. He said, actually, don't do that. If something happens, you can't get out. Which normal person thinks like that?
No one thinks like that. But because you've been in situations,
exactly, yeah. But it's true though. You have to, because I always say it just takes 1 minute for your life to get turned upside down road.
100%.
Like, literally, you know. So
at the restaurant, you got the wall to your back. You can see who's coming in here.
Listen,
happens cash, innit, for some
you know, one time, some brothers, this was a long time ago, some brothers, because, you know, alhamdulillah, see, in my community, there were some Revert brothers, West Indian brothers, but they were older, much older, like 20 years older. And they were like, when I used to see them, I used to feel a bit ashamed, because they were good brothers, and they were, mashallah, big beards out, and they're the first man I see with the thobes out or whatever. So one time they called me for dinner and said, actually, come. I've got beef going on the road, innit? So I didn't want to say no. So I said, cool, I'll come. So I went to one restaurant. So I made sure, like, I'm at the table facing the door, but I'm at the end of the table.
So you can get out.
And obviously, like I was young, innit? I've got something on me. So I was like, if someone comes in that way, I've got to move to the left to take away any drama from them. You understand? And I'm going there for a meal. I said, why did I even come here? Because you're not even enjoying the meal. You're thinking someone might come through that door. So see, on the street, you're in a constant like mind state. As in the police, you know, I've got friends that every car they see is a police car. Like, seriously, that's the police, that's undercovers and whatever. We didn't talk about it. Like I said, we've been bugged by the police before. My friend got 10 years. They put a listening device into his house or whatever. So that just stays with you. You know, people just very paranoid, and you're covering the mouth, walking down the road, talking. But like I said, that's going to affect you as you get older and older and older, you know. So it's not something, you know, when you watch this drill music, they make it look so glamorous. And I guarantee you, listen, if a man's on road really getting paper and whatever, whatnot, he's probably not going to be a rap star. You know, he's getting dough on the roads. Some of them are, don't get me wrong. But that is not real. That is not real life. There's no retakes and stuff like that. It goes wrong once on road, and then you might suffer them consequences till Yawm al-Qiyamah, you know? And whatever.
Khair. I think we can keep talking, but Jazakumullah khair, akhi. You have a way of telling stories. May Allah bless you in that, and you know, bless you in your business, inshallah, for your family. Jazakumullah khair. We leave it as that. Jazakumullah khair for watching, and inshallah we'll see you on the next one. Wassalamu alaikum.